Good morning. On behalf of Rice University and the James A. Baker III Institute for Public Policy, I welcome you to this forum featuring the Majority Leader of the U.S. House of Representatives, Eric Cantor. We're honored to welcome you to Rice today, Representative Cantor. Thank you, Congressman, for taking the time from what I know is a very busy schedule to share your thoughts with us today. As an institution of higher education, Rice welcomes free and open discussion of the important issues of the day, and we encourage many points of view about those issues. This openness to varied positions and opinions reflects our values of community and respect, which are essential aspects of the fabric that draws us together as a university. An essential part of our mission is to foster what Justice William Brennan called the marketplace of ideas, an open and vigorous yet civil exchange of ideas and information that, we hope, will lead to better solutions to the problems that face our country and our world. We welcome Representative Cantor's participation in that exchange here at Rice and in Houston. Let me also take a moment to recognize Rice's own member of Congress, Representative John Culberson. Thank you, Representative Culberson, for everything you do for Rice in Houston, and in particular in promoting the role of the university as a center of scientific innovation. We also had the privilege this morning of visiting with one of Rice's alums, Representative Pete Olson, who unfortunately could not join us for this forum. I want to also thank Ambassador Jerigian and his staff at the Baker Institute for hosting this event and for making the Baker Institute a vibrant center of the university's public policy debate and analysis. Representative Cantor, you come to Rice at a very special time in our history. Next October, we will celebrate Rice's 100th anniversary. We've already begun to commemorate the remarkable journey that has transformed Rice from a small but bold institute on the edge of an undeveloped prairie to a prestigious international university close to the center of the fourth largest city in the country. Your visit is part of the long-standing and ongoing conversation that takes place across our campus, and especially here at the Baker Institute, about national and international issues that face us as a country. In this, the beginning of our 100th year, we are especially pleased to welcome you as a national leader to our campus and to participation in our centennial celebration. Representative Cantor received his law degree from the College of William and Mary and his master's degree in real estate from Columbia University in New York. Following service in Virginia state government, Representative Cantor was elected in 2001 to represent Virginia's 7th Congressional District. He quickly emerged as a leader, and when Republicans took over the majority after the 2010 elections, he was chosen by his colleagues to serve as the majority leader for the current 112th Congress. He is the author, or co-author, of a New York Times best-selling book, Young Guns, A New Generation of Conservative Leaders. This past summer, he was the lead Republican negotiator during the summer-long debt negotiations. Through these efforts, he has earned a reputation as a strategic thinker and influential conservative within the Republican Party. Please join me in welcoming Majority Leader Eric Cantor to Rice University.
Good morning.
Mic check! Mic check! Mic check! Mic check! We fight it in outrage! We fight it in outrage! We welcome Eric Cantor! We welcome Eric Cantor! Who regularly votes! Who regularly votes! Against the interests of the people! Against the interests of the people!
Okay, we have had free speech does not include the right to interfere with the expressions and ideas with which you disagree. You will be escorted away from this forum for not respecting the fundamental principle of free speech within the university.
not Texans nor Rice students.
Well, I think, as I said, contrary to the very fundamental principle of free speech, which is not to interfere with others simply because you disagree with their views, and to interfere with the access of those who have come here to hear those views, whether or not we agree or disagree with those views. So, Congressman, I apologize for that interference, and we welcome you once more back to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you. You got to say, only in America. We are here for an exchange of ideas. And Mr. President, I thank you for that. Thank you for the kind introduction. Ambassador Dirigen, thank you very much as well. It is great to be here at Rice University in Houston, the energy capital of the world. And I'm told, as the President just said, that you will be celebrating the 100th year of this fine institution and the excellence and innovation that you have developed a reputation around. I also want to thank my good friend, my classmate, John Culberson, for being here and for all the tremendous work that he does for the residents of the Houston area and for his leadership for Texas. John, thank you. James Baker III, for whom this institute was named, wrote a book called Work Hard, Study, and Keep Out of Politics. Today, he might rephrase it to read, Work Hard, Study, and Keep Politics Out of It. Too often, our politics, our government, have become obstacles to American progress and prosperity. One thing I hear over and over is the only thing that worries us more than what Washington has done to us is what Washington will do to us next. So it's easy to bemoan our politics. No doubt they are headed in a troubling direction. Even so, it falls on all of us to identify the real problems and work toward common sense solutions. It is no badge of honor that politics, government, or Washington have become our newest four-letter words. We must ask, what has Washington done wrong to make so many rightfully resent it? Today, I believe many people feel that it has encroached on the American dream. That dream is built on hard work, education, and is being challenged. So is the hope that has always set us apart and has made America such a special place. So many people today are asking what the future holds for our country, and in a much bigger way, wondering what kind of country do we want to be? Who are we? What is it to be America, American? And just as important, what must we not become? When I think about the kind of country I want, when I think about the country I want to leave my kids, I think about my grandmother's story and about how my family got to America in the first place. My grandmother and her family fled religious persecution to come here at the turn of the last century. Like so many of her generation in Eastern Europe, my grandmother faced a future. No matter how hard she worked, no matter how smart she was, there were limits. Because of who her parents were, where she was born, there was but so far she could go. But our country isn't like that. It must never be. America offered and still offers immense and authentic opportunity. My grandmother eventually made her home in a working class section of my hometown of Richmond. As you can imagine, in the early 20th century, the South wasn't often the most accepting place for a young Jewish woman. Widowed by age 30, she raised my father and uncle in a tiny apartment above a grocery store that she and my grandfather had opened. She worked day and night and sacrificed tremendously to secure a better future for her sons. And sure enough, this young woman, who had the courage to journey to a distant land with hope as her only possession, lifted herself and her children into a more comfortable, secure, and opportunity-filled place. To her, it was about building a better life to leave to her kids. She made her own American dream into reality. This made her an American. Not middle class, not working class, not upper class, just an American. Period. Through hard work, her faith, and thrift, she was even able to send her 2 sons to college. All she wanted was a chance, a fair shot at making a better life for her and her 2 sons. She got that shot, and she made the most of it. Now, this is not just the stuff of American dreams, but also something much more. It is the grand American promise. The promise that if you work hard and play by the rules, our nation affords you an equal opportunity to make a better life for yourself. Our nation makes that promise to her people. In turn, our people promise to each other that we will cherish this unique freedom and work to make the most of it. In deciding as a country who we're going to be, we need to be sure that the opportunity my grandmother seized is still here for all of us. Make no mistake, our American way of life is not a given. Unless our laws protect it, unless our leaders respect it, and unless our people pursue it, it will wither and eventually disappear. And we must not let that happen. We must protect that fair shot, that no matter who you are or where you're from, everyone has access to an opportunity to earn their success. The basis upon which America was founded and thrives is providing people with the equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. This distinction is important. It is the tipping point between what America has always been and still is, though less and less, and what some want America to become. And this is what I've come to speak to you about today. There is a ladder of success in America. However, it is a ladder built not by Washington, but by hard work, responsibility, and the initiative of the people of our country. My grandmother worked her fingers to the bone so that her sons could have a better life than she did. Her sons, my dad, didn't disappoint her. He respected her sacrifices to send him to college, and he took that opportunity and started his own business in real estate with little more than the drive to succeed. Emulating my grandmother's work ethic, he was able to provide a quality of life for my brothers, my mother, and me. Why? For the very same reasons that inspired my grandmother. He wanted a better life for all of us. It is this foundation, hard work, faith, family, and opportunity, that provides each of us with the prospects of unlimited potential in America. Each generation is able to get a little further ahead, climbing up the ladder of success in our society. How quickly you move up, or sometimes down, should be up to you. Much of the conversation in the current political debate today has been focused on fairness in our society. Republicans believe that what is fair is a hand up, not a hand out. Now, we know that we all don't begin life's race from the same starting point. I was fortunate enough to be born into a stable family that afforded me the tools that I needed to get ahead. Not everyone is so lucky. Some are born into extremely difficult circumstances, facing severe obstacles. The fact is, many in America are coping with broken families, dealing with hunger and homelessness, confronted daily by violent crime or rampant drug use. I was recently asked, what does your party say to a 9-year-old inner-city kid scared to death growing up in a life of poverty? What can you do for that little girl? Well, we know there are no easy answers, but I believe that child needs a hand up to help her climb the ladder of success in our country. She also needs some guarantees in life. She needs to know that the rules are the same for everybody, that although she may have to work harder than many of us, she needs to know that she'll have a fair shot at making it in this country. She also needs the advantages of a solid family around her and a community that encourages her to learn and work hard. She needs some semblance of stability. The question for us is, how can we help provide it? Stability starts in the home, but it can extend to places of learning as well, especially for those children facing the toughest circumstances. We need to ensure access to the best schools available in her area. If that is a public school, great. Some say charter schools help to provide greater stability, and I wholeheartedly agree. In fact, President Obama has also expressed support for charter schools. Earlier this year, the House of Representatives passed a bipartisan Empowering Parents Through Quality Charter Schools Act that encourages states to support the development and expansion of charter schools. It also streamlined federal charter school funding to reduce administrative burdens. In California, parents have banded together to ensure that schools are being held accountable and can transfer their kids to better schools or even start a new one where it's needed. Kids in many cities actually line up for lotteries for open slots at better schools. No child should be forced to stay in a school that is failing her. Every child in America deserves an excellent education. It doesn't matter where this failing school is, in the city or suburbs, wealthy or poor town. Better schools benefit everyone. This little girl deserves a hand in attending a better school, a chance at greater stability, and the opportunity for success and happiness. As a nation, we must make education a priority, because if our schools fail, we fail. But parents also can use a helping hand. Take the single mom living somewhere here in Houston. After she puts her kids to bed and rests her head down at the end of each grueling day, she may be wondering if her job will still be there in the morning. She's probably stopped dreaming about moving up the ladder. She's more likely just worrying, hoping, praying that she doesn't fall down or off of it. We need to find a way to restore her faith that moving up the ladder in America, even slowly, is still possible in this country. That mom sacrifices most of her life for children, for her children. She lives paycheck to paycheck. Maybe she works 2 or even 3 jobs and has to worry about how she can take her sick child or parent to the doctor. Maybe she'd like to attend a school play that her little girl is performing in, but has to work. What's the working mom to do? How can we provide both her and her kids just a little more stability? When asked, many working moms say what they need most is just a little bit more time with their kids. We should find ways to encourage employers to provide working parents greater flexibility. Everyone plays a role in educating children. If parents have the opportunity to be engaged with their children, it will only increase their potential for success. One option is to allow private sector workers the ability to negotiate with their employers to choose between comp time and overtime pay, a benefit that federal, state, and local government employees have enjoyed for years. Now, does this solve all the problems? Of course not. But maybe with a little hope and a helping hand that makes life just a little easier, that single mom can send her children to college. Maybe one day her children will be like you. Now, as students here at Rice at the Baker Institute, you'll be much better positioned than most to land a job after graduation. But for the majority of young people, It is a small business that will give them their start. These employers are the restaurant owners, the healthcare providers, the small family farms, small high-tech startups. Small businessmen and women are the key formula to success of opportunity in America. Each one of them took a risk and did whatever they needed to make it work. They dipped into their savings or borrowed from family to start their dream. They committed countless hours and determination. They committed themselves and their lives in pursuit of this dream. These small business men and women may just employ a few people, but each one of those people is able to start building a better life for their families just because one person took a risk. That's why we should make it easier for them to start their dream. Last week, the U.S. House of Representatives passed 4 bipartisan bills that reduce regulation on small business owners, giving them a hand up to achieve their dream by easing access to capital. The bottom line is, it's all about lowering the threshold for entry into the marketplace, leveling the playing field. We need to get government out of the way so investors are more freely able to invest in a startup or a business. Now, in America, happiness is defined as a pursuit. And that definition occurs from our founders in the Declaration of Independence. Pursuing both happiness and independence derive from the ingenuity and grit of the American people, not the American government. America is a special place, different than any other on earth. And here's an illustration. I received a letter last year from a student, a graduate from Stanford, who happened to be working in England. He was amazed how differently entrepreneurs were regarded in Europe, how opportunities seemed limited, how existence seemed dull, and how hope was missing among his friends in the UK. The friends he met said they couldn't even imagine an entrepreneurial hotbed like Silicon Valley existing in Europe, or how they'd handle such an amazing chance to advance. He wrote, "Starting a business, even if you fail in the process, is a badge of honor in the U.S. But in Europe, entrepreneurship is often frowned upon, and consequently, the best and brightest are afraid to take a risk. Even though they're very smart and educated, when I ask them about their career path, no one ever mentions starting a business." Now think about that. In America, starting a business isn't something that's just possible. It's something expected. However, today, that is now being questioned. People have become afraid to take a risk. Many have lost their optimism about the future. People in America are frustrated. And the core of this frustration stems from a belief that the same opportunities afforded to previous generations no longer exist today. At the core of this frustration is that the playing field isn't equal. In a recent poll, 82% of Americans think that their children will be worse off than they are. Now, what happened? What happened to the hope of surpassing the success of your parents? What happened to the unyielding American exceptionalism and the sense that in America, impossible dreams are possible? Instead, there are those who want to divide America by turning those with less against those with more. They claim that these people have now made enough and haven't paid their fair share. The truth is that Washington needs to stop taking the income of hardworking American taxpayers and instead start rewarding their success. Think about it. How many of you really do think that Washington spends taxpayer money well? Even if you believe Washington has the best of intentions, its track record isn't good, which our $14+ trillion debt shows. Instead of asking Americans to give even more We're better off stopping all tax increases and instead forcing Washington to do more with less for once. Why shouldn't we create simple, clear, and fair rules that apply equally to all Americans? And then let you, the people, decide for yourselves who you'll become, how much you can earn, and what you'll do with your life. Instead, we see so many in Washington pitting us against one another. That tends to deflate the aspirational spirit of our people and fade the American dream. I believe it is time to regain that aspirational spirit. We've got to double down on the American dream. We should all dream to achieve. The most successful among us are positioned to use their talents to help grow our economy and give everyone a hand up the ladder and the dignity of a job. We should encourage them to extend their creativity and generosity to helping build the community infrastructure that provides a hand up and a fair shot to those less fortunate, like that little 9-year-old girl in the inner city. These successful people, these group of innovators, are the leaders of companies that create life-saving drugs for our sick parents and children. They are the people here at Rice and around this town that take risks to create companies that employ our families, our neighbors, and our friends. They are also the social entrepreneurs who support charter schools, the opportunity scholarships, the private job training programs, the community centers, and other elements of community life that provide stability and constructive values to children and their families who are struggling. They are trailblazers like Steve Jobs, a man who started with an idea in his garage and ended up providing iPhones and iPads to millions and changed the world. Job building and community building are what successful people can do. Through his example, you can see that America needs more than just a jobs plan. It needs a Steve Jobs plan. In a Steve Jobs plan, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat doesn't matter. In a Steve Jobs plan, no American, regardless of their current condition, believes they are unable to rise up. And in a Steve Jobs plan, we don't believe that those who succeed somehow take away from those still working their way up the ladder. Why? Because those who earn their success not only create good jobs and services that make our lives better, but they give back and help everyone move just a little bit further up the ladder, and everyone can win. So instead of talking about a fair share or spending time trying to push those at the top down, elected leaders in Washington should be trying to ensure that everyone has a fair shot and the opportunity to earn success up the ladder. The goal shouldn't be for everyone to meet in the middle. We should want all people to keep moving up and no one to be pulled down. Now, how do we do that? It cannot simply be about wealth redistribution. You don't just take from the guy at the top and give to the guy at the bottom and expect our problems to be solved. It does have to be about fairness, though. Over the last few years, America has seen too many favors for the politically connected, too many handouts for the most irresponsible, and then too large a bill for everyone else. This is a step backwards. It does injury to the American dream, and it violates that American promise. It hurts, in real lives and dollars, this country that we love. It punishes the exact behavior we must reward if ever we are to grow our way out of this economic darkness. Let me tell you what I'm talking about rewarding. A recent survey of over 500 successful entrepreneurs found that 93% came from middle or lower class backgrounds. Most of them were the first in their families to launch a business. We should reward them. We should try to make moving up the ladder just a little bit easier for them. We can help do that by making sure there's fairness at every level of the economic ladder. We must ensure those who abuse the rules are held accountable, and that those who work hard and play by the rules can get ahead. We must ensure that the solution to wealth disparity is wealth mobility. We must give everyone the chance to move up. Stability plus mobility equals agility. And in an agile country and society, people are climbing and succeeding. The key to economic empowerment is ensuring that income mobility. To me, economic empowerment means you can make more and achieve more this year than you did last. And for too long, indicators reflect the reverse. Too many people aren't moving up. And our efforts should be geared toward figuring out how to accelerate income mobility. From how we help those who are unemployed get back to work, to ways to encourage entrepreneurs and startups, to encouraging the best and brightest to stay here in America, there are many solutions that will help people succeed and grow this economy. As Americans, we care about everyone. We should want everyone to be successful. We want everyone to see the path forward. Now, Veterans Day is tomorrow, and as a nation, we will celebrate and honor those who have served. And each of us should seize the opportunity to give rise to the American dream. We must honor those who have given their life to that dream and those who wear the cloth of this country. And most of all, let each and every one of us of the 9/11 generation work just a little bit harder to ensure that the America that our troops come home to is worthy of them, one worthy of their sacrifice. There's a book entitled Man's Search for Meaning. It is one of the most influential books of the 20th century, written by a man named Viktor Frankl, who had a vision that I share. On the east coast of this great country stands a Statue of Liberty. On the west, said Frankl, should stand a statue of responsibility. In my vision, when these two statues join hands, the American people create a bridge that spans the whole country, a bridge of opportunity. And on the pillars of that bridge, we must erect our ladders, with those who are successful extending their hands to those who wish to climb. It is students like you, the successful leaders of the future, who can be the designers and builders of these ladders. It is you who can determine the dimension, durability, and direction of America's ladders. And who knows, some of you might forever change the world like Steve Jobs. But as you move upward, don't forget that we want everyone to be moving upward alongside of you. As you move upward, hold out your hands and help pull others just a little further up the ladder. Help them move up in your school, in your community, and in your workplace. That is who we are as Americans. That is what we do. We should all be committed to America's rising. Thank you very much.
Very appropriately, the Majority Leader ended his remarks talking about our students, and that's how we thought we would begin. I do ask people to respect that very fine line between a question and a speech, and make those questions as brief as possible. We're starting with 4 student leaders. I want to emphasize we know neither of us know what their questions are. You may know what the answers are without knowing what the questions are, but I don't. And we will begin with Georgia Lagudis, the president of our Student Association.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader, for joining us today at Rice University. And I, along with my fellow peers, are really excited and encouraged to hear that education remains a top priority. So my question is, considering the national economy and increasing global competitiveness, What can Congress do to ensure that students remain and feel inspired and confident now and in the next 10 years? How are we putting American universities at the top?
Let me respond by saying, first of all, American universities, Rice being in the premier rankings, are some of the crown jewels of this country. Because if you think about where we're headed this century as a country and how we're going to continue to lead, we are going to lead by being innovators. That innovation stems from the kind of efforts and research that is ongoing at places like Rice. And we have to be committed as a country to allow for an environment for that research to continue. We also, and that means from a funding standpoint, that means from creating an environment for public-private partnerships, that means creating an environment that we can take that research and those ideas and that innovation and translate them into commercialization, bring them to market. And right now what we're seeing is that process has become too difficult in this country. And so as students, you're going to look for opportunity and jobs when you graduate. And that same difficulty in translating that research into commercialization exists for job creators in this country. It's too difficult because right now the risk is too high. We need to think as America, we've got to be competitive. We've got to be able to match the efforts of our competitors in the Far East, in South America, and the rest. And we've got to finally adopt a mentality of an economic developer and to adopt a competitive strategy so that we can win. And we've got a lot of work to do as far as tax policy, regulatory policy, and access to capital in our markets.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to say that at Rice University, we're very excited that you're here today and that we have the opportunity to talk with you. And many of our students are aspiring leaders and look to you. And we are really supportive of what you do. And thank you again for coming here today.
Thank you very much.
Our second question is from Representative of our Graduate Student Association, Kenneth Evans.
Hello. So
You're obviously height disadvantaged.
So I'm a fourth-year graduate student in the Applied Physics PhD program, and I'm also a policy intern here in the Science and Technology program. My question is a follow-up to Georgia's. In the last several years, we've seen several of the major science agencies, their budgets remain stagnant or decline. And I'm wondering, as the budget in the next several months, hopefully, comes to an agreement, where do you see the science budgets for the major agencies, say NSF, NIH, the DOE's Office of Science? How do you see that affecting our economy, job opportunities for PhD students coming into the market, and specifically with NSF, who provides most of the outreach opportunities and running the gamut for a lot of the different, fields. How do you see that affecting the progress that America is making in science and innovation?
First of all, I think if you look at the proposals coming out of the U.S. House of Representatives, we have put a priority on research. Again, goes back to my comments earlier about the need for universities such as this to be in the forefront to help our country lead with innovation. That goal occurs in the context of a very difficult fiscal outlook for the country. I think all of us know that we are generating deficits over $1 trillion and have done so for the last several years. And we are then being forced to choose and choose priorities. Research is a priority. But there will also be the necessary decision-making as to how those research dollars flow. And that is a decision that we are just about in the process of considering, is what will be the structure of research grants going forward? What will that be? As we look to some of our competitors abroad, there is a mindset of centralizing research grants and research allowing for easier priority making, allowing for perhaps more focused research dollar grants. In our country, we have seen the proliferation of a lot of innovation. It doesn't just occur at one university, obviously. We have a much more entrepreneurial, competitive research environment in this country. And I think it has served us well, but we've got to make sure that the efficiencies that we need are being achieved. And as we continue to try and assess, are we competing well? Is our research still that which we want? We also have to, as you note, consider how is it that we're going to take those ideas to market and create the jobs and opportunities for PhD students and the rest. And much of that has to do with the environment for people in this country to take risks, and the environment that this country offers to global investors to come here and take risks and to build enterprises. And right now, we see an alarming rate of decline in the startup world in this country. We see a decline in the number of IPOs in this country versus elsewhere. We've got to make sure that we get our regulatory system under control so that it's sensible in terms of regulation, but that we make sure that government is not the one that determines who can and can't succeed. We've got an even playing field for everybody. We've got to have jobs. We've got to have the best and the brightest coming here and staying here. If we have and continue to have people from around the world wanting to come to Rice and other universities, we ought to provide incentives for them to stay, because they can help create jobs. They can help us grow our economy. This is all part of the discussion that we're about in trying to maintain a competitive America in the 21st century.
Thank you. So we have two more sort of student representatives, and then we'll open it up. The next is the Rice Young Democrat leader, Rahul Rekhi. We have a substitute.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming to Rice, Representative Cantor. I had a more specific policy question. As you know, the temporary payroll tax cut is set to expire at the start of next year, and this would result in $120 billion in higher taxes for working Americans. So my question is, how will the House leadership respond to the President's call for a payroll tax cut extension?
The House leadership, and I think Republicans in general, do not believe that taxes should go up on anybody, especially in an economy like this. So that provision, as you rightfully point out, is a priority for the White House and is part of the discussions ongoing about how we resolve this budget issue by the end of the year. And we'll continue to sort of focus on that with the tenet, we don't believe taxes should go up on anybody.
And the last of the prearranged questioners, Rice Young Conservative leader Anthony Lauriello.
Congressman, like you, I worry about our nation's ballooning debt, but I'm a little unconvinced about the balanced budget amendment, which you've been a proponent of. Justice Scalia has said that such an amendment would result in a lot of lawsuits because what a balanced budget is kind of could be up to the courts. I was wondering, how would we resolve this if we passed such an amendment?
Well, if there are lawsuits, obviously the courts were going to have to resolve it. The thinking is a balanced budget amendment would be the check on unbridled spending in Washington. We continue to spend money we don't have, and we're continuing to rely on the confidence of global investors as well as those domestic to buy our debt. And if we don't demonstrate that we're going to be a viable ongoing concern fiscally, then we will no longer be able to be the country we are, and all we have to do is look to Europe right now to see what we may become. So we believe strongly that a balanced budget is something we should have. Now, the discussion about what a balance is or not, I guess that legal question can be determined in the courts. I think most Americans have to live within their means, whether in their households or their businesses, and most states have a balanced budget amendment. and exists in a way that has not been challenged in court. So we're hopeful that we can move towards that end.
Okay, so if you have a question, please line up behind one of the microphones. Again, please keep it as brief as you can because we have very little time. Frankly, we're probably only going to have time for, I hope, 4 questions if everybody's real quick.
Very quickly,
Representative Cantor. I'm a member of the Rice debate team, and I had one quick question for you about the Republican platform on spending increases. I understand that right now there's an ideology of maintaining spending or reducing spending. For what causes is the Republican Party prepared to increase spending in the status quo?
Excuse me?
For what causes is the Republican Party prepared to increase spending in the status quo? What would justify a spending increase?
Well, again, I mean, right now we are all facing this incredible deficit and the debt that we're all going to pay for, not just you, the future generation, because it will come to roost on us now. And so what it should be about is asking, what are the priorities? What are the priorities for this country? Obviously, national defense and the security of our country comes first and foremost, or we won't have a country. We've got to make sure that we're adequately funding that. And one of the real challenges for us is how are we going to continue to lead and be the world superpower that we are if our economy is not strong? And so then it says, well, where are we going to go in terms of either spending dollars or effecting reform to get our economy back on track? So it's about defense, it's about security, it's about the economy. Obviously, we care about health care. That's so personal for everybody. And this country spends a lot of money on health care. And that's been much the discussion of debate this year because we've got to do something to deal with the spiraling costs. And unfortunately, the President's bill that passed 2 years ago didn't do that. And the Congressional Budget Office has now validated that health care bill does not arrest the spiraling costs in this country. And many of us are very fearful that bill will affect the kind of quality of care that most Americans get. So we've got to put some effort into designing a system, whether it's spending money or affecting reform, that help get to the outcomes that we want.
Thank you.
Next question.
I'll be quick. You talked a lot about the inner city girl and ensuring equality of opportunity. I was curious, currently with the economy, I guess the way it is, with the House's pledge to not raise taxes, with our, I guess, idea of doing more with less, how do you plan on paying for those educational opportunities specifically? You mentioned that you're in support of charter schools, and that's great, but for the public schools that are out there, how do we ensure that they continue to exist, the teachers continue to, I guess, be most effective? How do we pay with that if we're not raising taxes, the economy's struggling?
Well, first of all, we've got to get growth going again. Under any scenario, we need this economy to get back on track. And I spoke a lot about the uncertainty that exists in holding capital back and investors back. We've got to address that. As far as this public school system in this country is concerned, all 3 of my children grew up in public schools. They're good public schools. But unfortunately, a lot of children in this country today are not as fortunate and don't have good public schools. So we have to look to see how you make them good. And the evidence shows it's not just money. It's not just money because some of the highest cost school districts in the country are the least performing. So clearly we've got to affect the reform. And if you're looking at how we're going to, and you asked and suggest about raising taxes, the problem right now is this. You have a budget situation that is disproportionately caused at the federal level by health care entitlements. It's because of the demographics of this country and the promises that have been made. The facts are 10,000 people every day turn 65 and become eligible for Medicare. And the Medicare program in this country is funded through premiums and taxes. The revenue derived from those premiums and taxes covers a little over half of that program. So if you think about that, that's every day times 10,000. You are 50% in the hole. You can't sustain that. You can't tax your way out of it. You can't grow your way out of it. That's why we have proposed to reform the system and maintain the safety net of our entitlements for those who need it. And that's why we've got to do that. If you don't do that, and then you raise taxes, you are in essence digging the hole deeper. And you're asking people, those job creators that we so desperately need to create jobs and get the growth going again, you're asking them to really throw good money after bad. And what you're also doing by saying raise taxes right now if you're not going to fix the problem, you're exacerbating the jobs and economic growth crisis. Because it's counterintuitive to think you're going to raise taxes on those who we want to invest, because they're not going to do it because it raises the price of that risk and lessens the likelihood of return.
That question?
Hey, Congressman, you mentioned that your grandmother came over from Europe to escape the discrimination based on her religion and to find the equal opportunity of the United States. And throughout the history of our country, what we do is we've enacted legislation to protect those who aren't able to get equal opportunity due to discrimination. So what I wanted to know is why in 2007 did you vote against the Employment Non-Discrimination Act that would protect people based on sexual orientation from discrimination in the workplace?
Look, none of us on either side of the aisle, either side of the political or philosophical spectrum want discrimination for anybody. I mean, you're right. This country was built on equal opportunity, and all people should be treated fairly. That particular bill was designed so that those employers who wanted to, in particular the faith-based employers, who wanted to be able to hire individuals to further the mission of a private entity from a faith standpoint, were making the case they were not going to be able to do so the way that bill was crafted. Thus my vote. But again, I understand your question. All of us should be driving towards equality of opportunity for everyone, for no matter what your background or who you are, or what you're pursuing.
Thank you.
Mr. Representative, I'd just like to thank you for coming to Rice and thank you for your belief in Rice students as the future leaders of the world. I also appreciate your steadfast devotion to creating opportunities for all Americans. My particular question concerns the American tax code. Dr. Kentworthy was here and spoke to some Baker Institute Student Forum members just about a week ago, and he mentioned some of his criticism was that the American payroll tax capped at $108,000, as well as a sales, maybe neither progressive nor equal for all Americans, but rather regressive, as well as the sales tax. So for people earning in the highest income brackets may spend 10-15% of their income on goods. Those earning less will have to spend more, the higher percentage of their income on goods, and are therefore being taxed even more than those in the higher income bracket. My question, I'd just like to hear your thoughts about what action needs to take place, if any, in reforming the American tax policy.
Sure. Most of us, and I'm one, believe we got to reform the tax code. And for a variety of reasons, we have a tax code that really skews the allocation of capital and is getting in the way of, I think, our return to growth in this economy. You speak about sort of the fairness issue in the tax code, and I agree that the tax code does not breed fair results. We've got to look to see and make sure it's a balanced approach. But right now, what you have is almost, I think, 47% of the people of this country don't pay any income taxes. Now, to me, I got to ask, is that fair? I mean, I think everybody should have some skin in the game. Even if it's $1, we ought to have people willing to make sure, or making sure that they're part of what we're trying to do, not just those who receive benefits and don't pay on the income side. But we do need to be careful. We do need to be mindful of those at the lower end of the spectrum. We don't want to disproportionately burden them, no. But we ought to be looking at seeing how we can bring down rates. I mean, we know from a competitive standpoint, our corporate tax system is extremely non-competitive. In fact, next to Japan, we're the worst in the OECD countries. And again, going back to how we're going to grow the economy, you're not going to provide incentive for people to come put their corporations or business here with that kind of tax system. We also disadvantage American-based multinationals, many of whom are headquartered in this city. And when they look at other localities, around the world that don't treat their counterparts or their competitors like we treat them, they're going to begin to take a second look as to whether it makes sense to headquarter here in America. So we've got to look to bring down those rates. We've got to look to fill the loopholes that are the preferences that have appeared in the code over the last several decades. Those loopholes tend to skew allocation of capital. We don't want that. We want a simpler, fairer code that everybody can abide by, that can help promote an environment for growth.
So we're actually over time. I'm going to take two more questions, take both questions, and then you can choose which or a combination you'd like to answer.
Okay, on a different topic. When abortions were illegal, women had them anyway, and thousands died or were physically maimed. If, according to your voting record, if you outlaw abortion, is that acceptable collateral damage to you? Thank you.
Well, maybe you should answer that, and then we'll take the last one.
I don't know how we're going to combine that with another.
That was my thought.
If you look at my voting record, and what we do in Congress is we work to make sure that taxpayer dollars are not used to fund abortions. And that's what my voting record would reflect. Thank you.
Last question.
You mentioned Houston as a leader in the energy industry. And with companies like Solyndra showing how government handouts can be a waste of taxpayer monies, but then also examples like Brazilian ethanol or the tax breaks given to oil industry back in the Great Depression, showing that the government can help industries become bedrocks of the country's industry. How does the United States help the emerging renewable energy market grow here in the United States when other countries are offering these kind of handouts that could give those companies an advantage?
That's a great question. We've got to strive and drive towards sustainable growth. And you're right, an energy security for the future is of the utmost import. And I was actually here in Houston yesterday and visited some of the employers and businesses here who are fast about trying to do that. And in fact, right now, although we want a much more diverse energy future, this country has been very blessed with a lot of resources in the fossil fuel arena. And as you know, many of the companies here in Houston are spending a lot of resources and time trying to pursue the exploration and production of that energy here in a clean and responsible way. And what I think would work for them would work for industry players in any sector. That is certainty. That is an environment in which the tax code and the regulatory policy does not impose greater cost and risk. Again, we've got to have the balance because we want to do it clean and we want to do it responsibly. But I think we can help compete in the clean energy world as well as any other industry by an environment to innovate, to invest capital, which involves certainty in the R&D tax credit, which involves a tax code and marginal rates and capital gains rates that are competitive globally. Because all things being held equal, if we can accomplish those things, I guarantee you people will want to come do business in America. So we've got plenty of work to do just addressing those basics, and I think that we can compete in any sector.
Please join me in thanking the Majority Leader for joining us.
Thank you very much.